This is crazy. My husband tracked my location daily for months and caught me cheating. Imagine finding out that your significant other has been tracking your every move for months without you even knowing. I mean, talk about a major breach of trust, right? Yes, I know that I was wrong in every way, and to go outside your marital home or marriage to commit adultery is something serious and unforgivable. I will never forget the wrath that Mario gave me when he discovered my infertility. I'm even ashamed to speak about this, but I have to in order to be able to move forward. I've been married for 8 years to my childhood and university sweetheart, Mario, male, 32. We started dating during my first year in Washington University, and he was in his second year. I remember the first time he approached me, she was a kind and down-to-earth gentleman, but a bit of a weirdo or a snob. I, on the other hand, was just a bubbly and carefree girl studying research-based higher degree, and he was doing computer studies. And let me tell you what happened. So I, female 28, met this fine, handsome, and sexy-looking man when I was visiting my aunt in Brooklyn for summer holidays. The first time I saw him, I developed a huge crush on him. Well, that time he had just turned 24 and I was 20. I was studying in college in Baruch College in New York City, but after like a year, I moved to Washington University, meaning I was in the same university as Mario. My aunt had always asked me to move in with her since she was staying alone. Her husband was working overseas. After I saw Mario, I then reconsidered my aunt's offer since I was living in a student apartment. So I moved in with my aunt after I found out that Mario and his family were my aunt's neighbors, so I made it my mission to at least be friends with him since I didn't have any. One boring day, I had been scared to ask for friendship with Mario, so I continued staying in the house. On that boring and sunny day, I decided to go and stay outside because the house was too boring for me and I needed some air. So as I was still outside, Mario arrived. Well, he was going with his family. My heart started beating so fast that I even thought it would stop. I then stared at him, or better say, drooled on him for a long time. This man was fine. His body structure was to die for, not to mention his voice and smile. God, I wanted to die. Anyway, I think he saw that I was looking at him. Then he approached me after he had offloaded the things they had come with. Since that boring day, we became friends. That time he was to leave for school in 3 days since he lived in students' residential accommodation. He was a computer geek, which explained why he went to Washington University. I had heard that it was the best in technical studies here in London. Our friendship got stronger each day, as much as I had a huge crush on him, but I had closed my crush to a small cage. At least we were friends and we were spending more time together. I was not used to Brooklyn, so he would take me to different places to visit, different ice cream shops. There was this weekend when he came to my aunt's house and asked me to accompany him somewhere. I didn't ask much, so I went with him, only to find out that we were going to Central Park, which was 35 minutes drive away from Brooklyn. We dated for a year and a few months, and he proposed to me during summer holidays. I was 19 years old at that time, and he was 22 years old. Our relationship was full of life, love, and happiness. Mario understood my passion in protecting and serving the community, and knowing about the world's crimes and the corruption of each and every country in the world. I can say I'm a professional Navy member, and I knew that my job was to serve and protect, meaning I would travel around the world collecting information about some countries and ask the reason why they were such corrupted leaders. We got married when I turned 20. Well, my parents didn't like Mario for me, but I knew what I wanted, so I chose Mario despite my parents' disapproval. I was just enough that my aunt loved him and accepted him as he was. You know, we can't choose for the heart, right? It knows what it wants, and it will always make sure to get what it wants. In 2022, everything started changing. I became a person I don't know. I couldn't even recognize myself. I don't know what really made me cheat on my husband, but I did. And instead of making it a once-off thing, I decided to have an affair outside my marriage. I remember when I lied to him about where I was going. That time I had completely forgotten that Mario is a computer geek. He loves playing with his computer, investigating or researching things on dark websites. I had even forgotten that he was not only a computer person, but a hacker too, and he always knows where I go and who I am in contact with. I had told him that I was visiting my friend Charlotte, but I just didn't know he already had information of where I was exactly going. Lack of emotional connection and support in a marriage can lead you to try to find that connection elsewhere. I loved my husband dearly, but I just felt unappreciated and misunderstood in our marriage. As the years went by, he seemed to give me less and less attention. I started to wonder if I made the right decision marrying him. Every year I thought he was going to change. We were emotionally distant while in the same place. He didn't look at me the same way he usually did. I tried to even change the way I looked, went to the gym, and even bought myself some new clothes so he could notice me. I would sometimes ask myself if he didn't find me attractive anymore, or maybe he had found someone else better than me. But why not divorce me or tell me straight in the face that you have lost attraction, or you no longer feel me anymore, because stringing a person along while you know that you no longer feel them or love them anymore hurts more than receiving divorce papers or breakups and not getting any explanation for the separation. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Please help me understand why men do this to us but get angry when we do it to them. The things that stand out the most looking back as red flags include: he once trespassed in my friend's male friend house who I was staying with, hiding behind furniture and spying on us to make sure I wasn't sleeping with my friend. I wasn't. He once made a very extensive list of things he didn't like about me. He would keep track of how many times he had suicidal thoughts, and he would throw it in my face and blame me for having those thoughts. Not something he did to me. But he told me a story about how he tried to get his kid put up for adoption just to spite his baby mama so she could never see him again. He also kind of always talked down to me, and he says he didn't mean it that way, and I don't necessarily think he did, but he always just kind of made me feel kind of dumb. After a few years, I ended up joining the Navy and we got married. After my first deployment, I came back, and it's hard to explain, but things just felt off. I didn't feel attracted to him anymore and really felt uncomfortable with any kind of intimacy or him touching me, but I figured I'd get over it and things would go back to normal. Eventually, months and then years went by, and I still had that same feeling. I didn't really feel comfortable telling him how I felt because usually when I said something was upsetting me, he wouldn't really care. And plus, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. He would often touch me, and it's hard to explain, but I would get the same sick feeling in my stomach that I can only compare to the same feeling I had when I had gotten assaulted once in the past. So I would either just clearly act uncomfortable, but he would keep touching me, or sometimes I would say I didn't want to be touched. And he would sometimes continue, but sometimes he would stop. However, we went years without having sex, and we would just kind of act like things were normal even though our marriage was extremely degraded, but I guess we both just didn't want to talk about it. These years were hard, and I felt extremely depressed but kept it bottled up. I didn't plan on cheating, but since I already felt that my marriage was over, when someone made a move on me, I ended up starting an affair. I felt extremely guilty and admitted it to him after about a month. He said he forgave me. I stopped the affair for a while but eventually started it up again. And he said he was okay if I kept it going during deployment if I cut it off when I got back. And I told him if he wanted to sleep with someone else too, that was fine. When I got back, I still wanted a divorce, and I figured since I was trying to get divorced, why not keep the affair going? I kept asking for a divorce, but he kept saying no, that he wanted to stay married. I told him I still wanted to be friends and we could do it amicably. I told him I thought he deserved to be with someone that would be better for him than me. But he refused to sign papers. I felt completely trapped. And I used drugs a few times while on leave and on long weekends because I felt that that was the only thing that could make me feel any happiness. While I was still on drugs, they helped me through the day. Little did I know that the bastard that I was married to was actually taking every moment that I was doing and used it against me. So my affair and I actually met at work. He was more like my partner. The person I had an affair with, was Nicholas Brown, male 32. He was just everything that I had needed in a man, you know. When I would be with him, I would forget about my shame of a marriage. He gave me peace and that sense of belonging, you know. Well, Nicholas and I met through another friend of mine who was hosting a gathering at his house. So my friend introduced us, and I felt like our energies were colliding even though I was married, but I couldn't care less because my marriage was more like a park where everyone comes and goes at any time. Mario was a control freak. I really don't know where he had got his behavior and the attitude, but it was really annoying. Do you know the pain of being in an unloving marriage, but because the man that you had married has somehow been obsessed with you without any reason? Meaning I was stuck with him since he didn't want to sign the divorce papers. Nicholas was really funny, and he knew how to make a person forget their problems. From that moment we met, there was undeniable chemistry between us, you know. He made me forget that I had a very huge and depressing problem in my house. My husband was depressing me to a point that I was sleeping with wine and drugs every night. Nicholas and I talked for hours, and I felt more alive than I had ever been in years. Nicholas was attentive and complimentary, showering me with affection. He understood a woman's needs and desires, you know. He made me feel like I was a woman again, and that I was not the problem. It was a lot, and I was drowning. As we were talking and laughing, Nicholas started telling me sweet things that would make any woman melt. But then I remembered that I was actually a married woman. We spoke more about ourselves. I even mentioned the problems I was facing in my marriage. He was kind and understanding, and he listened to me without judgment. He offered me a shoulder to cry on and a sympathetic ear, something that Mario had failed to do. Over time, Nicholas and I became close friends, and I found myself confiding in him more and more. He was always there for me, and he made me feel seen and heard in a way that Mario had not for years. So we started hanging out as friends, of course. As the months passed, my friendship with Nicholas grew stronger, and we started to develop feelings for each other. We began an affair, and I found myself feeling alive and desired for the first time in years. He had that dopamine over me that I was missing, and every moment with him was magical. I respected my husband, or let me say my obsession with my husband, but this newfound excitement and admiration was intoxicating. I knew I shouldn't have done this, but the thrill of being desired by someone new was hard to resist. It felt like I was living in another dimension. It was really refreshing. The way Mario didn't pay attention to me, he didn't even notice what was happening in front of his eyes. I had thought he was going to notice some changes in me or the way I was always out. I was no longer spending much time in the house, especially during weekends. I was always out with either Nicholas or by myself. That was how ignorant he was after I had managed to convince him to let me do my things and live my life, and I would not go with the divorce settlement, while I knew exactly that I didn't mean any of the words that I had told him. I would always wonder what was happening in his head, but I got tired of being concerned. It was really hurting me that my husband was treating me the way he was treating me. We became more like housemates who share a bedroom and not husband and wife. I needed his time, attention, and affection at first, but he was too busy for that up until I couldn't anymore. I once had thoughts of him cheating on me or performing adultery on our marriage because of the way he was acting. What was hurting the most was that someone else was giving me the attention I had always longed for, the time I needed, and affection, and it was not my husband, can you believe it? My happiness was in the hands of a certain stranger named Nicholas. Nick, that's how I used to call Nicholas to shorten his name, was giving me an adrenaline rush, and he was making me happy. Putting a smile on my face and thinking about him would make me giggle. I don't even remember when was the last time I had felt like that. I was sure that even my soul had a dust of sorrows because I was no longer happy with my husband. Nicholas had that effect on me that I couldn't even explain, but it was there. Sometimes when my day wasn't a great day, if he didn't call or if I didn't see him at our secret spot, he surely knew what I've been missing. Was I too attached to Nicholas? Well, I think I was. One evening, Nick suggested we sneak away for a romantic getaway together. Mario had not been home for a couple of days. Well, it was more like he would come back from wherever he was very late, and I would be long asleep, then leave very early around 6 in the morning, and I would still be sleeping. I had never been on a real vacation with my husband, besides on our honeymoon, which was cut short by an emergency that needed him at work, and the thought of escaping my mundane life for a weekend with Nicholas was enticing. I had to come up with an excuse to leave the house, so I texted Mario and told him that I was going out with friends for a weekend getaway. Nicholas and booked a room at a hotel in the city, just a few hours away from where I was staying. When we arrived at the hotel, he took my hand and led me to our room. He pulled me close and kissed me passionately. The moment was electric, and I melted into his embrace. I felt really great to feel someone giving you such attention. I couldn't even remember the day I last had an intimate moment with a male person or my husband. He would always come back tired to even touch me. The only thing he managed to do was giving me a perk when he came back from work or going, and that was it. So it was actually a very good feeling and escape for me. Nicholas and I spent the entire weekend exploring the city and getting to know each other better. He showered me with compliments and made me feel like the most desirable woman in the world. It felt so right at that moment, like there was nothing wrong. My weekend with Nicholas was what I had really needed. It was truly therapeutic for me. So as we were exploring the city, Nicholas had suggested that we go to the beach. Since it was hot, so the weather allowed, we went to the beach. He then asked me to swim with him. I was a bit hesitant at first, but he begged me, and I couldn't resist his begging, sexy eyes. So I eventually agreed, so we swam together. As we were swimming together in the ocean, I felt a rush of excitement and guilt. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I just couldn't help myself. I was tired of feeling ignored and unappreciated by my husband, and this handsome Nicholas guy was making me feel alive again. After the swim, Nick and I went back to the hotel room and spent the night together. It was a passionate and intense encounter, and I felt like I had finally found the attention and affection I had been missing from my husband. He was so gentle with me. He appreciated and complimented my body in a way that I felt like living my true self. He took me to another planet. I was feeling all sorts of tingles and butterflies inside me. As our weekend together came to an end, I knew I had crossed a line. I was falling for Nicholas, and I was falling really hard. It was scary. I felt guilty about what I had done and wondered if I should confess everything to him or not. But confessing was going to ruin a lot of things and destroy my marriage. It was like I was stuck between a rock and a very hard place, and I didn't even know how to get out of the situation. As much as I loved my husband, but sometimes I find myself feeling particularly lonely and unappreciated. So one summer day, it was my husband's, well, Mario's 42nd birthday, so I had decided that I would throw a party for him, not just because he was turning 42, but I wanted him to focus on one thing. That time, Nicholas, had gone to visit his family in Washington, D.C., so I had no one who was going to give me any attention, even though he would call to check up on me. So I wanted to make my husband at least pay attention to me and rethink about our marriage because I had that feeling that said it was over because of the way he was never home nor giving me attention. I had invited his friends, family, and associates for his surprise 42nd birthday party. So I was busy preparing for my husband's birthday party. I had planned everything, from all of his favorite foods and decorations. Yes, I was feeling about what I was doing with Nicholas, but I also needed my husband's time and attention, so the party was going to give me that, even if it was for a day. Yes, I had given up on fighting him to sign the divorce papers and trying to be a better partner. I was somehow anxious and so excited to see the look on his face when he walked into the living room and saw all of his friends, associates, and family gathered there, waiting to celebrate him. Later on, he came back and was pretty much surprised. I was happy to see that surprised look on his face, and it was exactly what I had been hoping for. I saw it on his face that he was happy, even though I was not. The party went well, but I was bored and missing Nicholas. Mario was busy with his friends and associates. He didn't even come to say thank you for the surprise party. I felt so unappreciated and unnoticed. Later on, people left, and I went to put on my sexy number, lingerie, to bring back the spark in our marriage. And guess what happened? He came to the bedroom, went to take a shower, then he slept. He even snored. It was really heartbreaking because I was trying to fix my marriage so that I would forget about what I was doing with Nicholas, but my husband was not even getting the hints of everything I did or was trying to do. I had hoped that he would at least notice every effort that I was putting on our marriage, but I guess I was in it alone. The following morning, I made sure to wake up early so that I would catch him before he left for work. Luckily, I found him not even dressed. He didn't look like a person who was going to work, so I asked him to give me a moment with him because we needed to talk. I was shocked when he agreed to have the talk with me, because in my mind, I had already told myself that he was going to make an excuse so that he would avoid the talk I wanted to do. So as we were talking, I told him everything that had been hurting me in our marriage and how much he never gave me any attention or affection. He told me lots of excuses, telling me that the reason he was busy was because he was trying to grow his business for our future, and that he didn't want his children to suffer when he passed on, so he had to secure their future legacy. I just didn't believe his lame and lousy excuse because we didn't even have children, and yet he was talking about our children's future legacy. I mean, how we were even going to make children if he was the kind of person he was. I'm sure that if we had children, they were going to suffer like I was. They were not going to get his attention like I was. So somehow I thank God that he didn't bless us with any children. If he was still the Mario that I had met in my aunt's hometown when he was also visiting his parents, then I would have said that he would be a great father because he was a great boyfriend and life partner at that time. Until he was not, and that happened after we had been married for a year and some months. We talked and he apologized, promising me that he would change and would try to be a better husband. There was progress, right? That day we had spent the day together, watching movies and doing lots of lovemaking during the day. He then told me to get ready because we were going out. Wasn't I the happiest woman? I was over the moon. I had thought that my man was finally back. That day I managed to forget about Nicholas for the day and enjoy the moment with my husband. Later on, we went out to have dinner, and it was really great going out with him. I had missed my husband a lot. Days passed, he was the loving, caring, affectionate, and funny Mario that I had fallen in love with. We made lots and lots of love, mind you. That time Nicholas had been trying to call several times, but I had put my phone on silent because I didn't want any disturbance when spending time with my husband after a long time of trying to get his attention. He had also started noticing me, complimenting, giving me his time and attention. The guilt was there because I knew that deep down, if my husband was to find out about my abomination with Nicholas, my efforts would have gone to waste. A lot would be ruined, so I prayed that he does not find out. About 2 months later, I found out that I was pregnant. I was shocked and somehow happy because it was obvious that the child was my husband's, forgetting that I had slept with Nicholas also about a week before I fixed things with my husband. I told my husband about the pregnancy and he was ecstatic. I had never seen my husband that happy in a very long time, and it made my heart at peace. I had broken things off with Nicholas for the sake of peace, and because I had fixed things with my husband and I didn't want any destruction in the process of fixing my marriage with Mario. As expected, Nicholas was angry. Well, angry was a small definition of how he was. I can say he was furious because after I had broken things off with him, he threw tantrums on me, telling me that I had led him on. Then I was dumping him like a used toilet paper just because my husband had decided to come back to his senses. I first didn't understand his anger because in whatever that we were doing, we had never titled it or officialized any relationship going on between us, even though I had caught feelings for him, and I had fallen more than hard for him. I told myself that it was just friends who also help each other in one another's desires. Yes, I had caught some feelings, I won't lie on that, but then it was not feelings of love, but it was feelings of lust, so I didn't really understand his outburst. Maybe I might have led him on, but that didn't give him the authority to call me names just because I had fixed things with my husband. Those were my words trying to make myself feel better. I knew that I would not live for long without missing Nicholas. Was I wrong to do that? Was it unfair? So as months passed, my tummy was growing. My marriage was where I had wanted it to be. My husband was back, showering me with so much love and attention. I enjoyed and loved every moment of it. On the other hand, Nicholas was becoming a bee in the ear. He was threatening me a lot. I tried ignoring him, but he was persistent about exposing our little affair and telling my husband what had been happening behind his back. Another side of me was scared because I didn't understand the sudden obsession he had over me, while the other side wanted to just hire a hitman and finish him because he was not just threatening me, but also my marriage. I don't know why I had such bad luck when it came to men because I had chosen obsessive men, and it was really frustrating. During those months, I remember it very well. I was going with my husband to do baby shopping. We bumped into Nicholas, and an unexpected thing happened. Nicholas greeted us, then came to me to ask when I would see him. We needed to talk. Imagine him saying that in front of Mario. Nicholas and my husband looked like they had known each other for quite some time, the way they were talking to each other. I was so uncomfortable and prayed that Nicholas does not spill the beans to Mario because if he did, my marriage would be over. Mario introduced Nicholas as his big client. Mind you, I had never met or knew any of his clients. I knew that a lot of people were coming to him or contacting him when they wanted to do those dark stuff, like cracking someone's accounts or finding people, so it came as a shock to me. About a year later, I had already given birth to a very handsome baby boy, but a strange thing happened. The baby looked so much like Nicholas. It was like his clown or his hard photocopy. Even the body features were just like Nicholas. That time I was pretty sure that the child was Mario's. My husband didn't notice at first because he had always wanted to have a child, but because of his busy schedule, he didn't have time. His words, not mine. That time I had already known that Nicholas was the father of the child, but I couldn't burst my husband's happy bubbles and ruin my marriage because of Nicholas, so I kept everything a secret. Months passed, my husband went back to his old absent self, and he would come home late and go to work very early. I didn't understand what was going on with him because if I asked him, he would be closed off and say it was just work. That really took me back to missing Nicholas, but I would remember that he was Mario's client, so if I were to go back to him, it would be too risky. So it was just me and my son. I felt like my marriage had finally come an end. You know when you have that feeling that notifies you that something is wrong, and it is the end of everything. That was what I felt like. During that month, Nicholas called me and asked for a meetup, of which was what I also wanted because there was a baby involved in our thing. So we met after like 5 days. I told him about the child, and he just told me that he knew that the child was his, but he couldn't risk getting me in trouble with the lunatic that I had married. I was glad that he understood my situation, and he was willing to take responsibility for his child. There is nothing charming as seeing the baby being present in a baby's life. It's just so awesome, hey. You know, I wasn't really over Nicholas, well, at least my heart wasn't, plus I had missed him a lot ever since Mario had gone back to his old ways. That day, Nicholas suggested that we go to a place that was less crowded and in public because the child was still too small to be around people, especially in public places. So we ended up booking an Airbnb not too far from the city. We spent the day talking a lot about us and the baby. It was just so refreshing having to be with someone who doesn't even force things to be with you. Everything was just flowing. It was like we were just meant to be together. Okay, so later on, I had forgotten about my phone and I had switched it off because I was spending time with Nicholas and our child. As we were chilling like that, there was someone who knocked very roughly at the door. When I asked who it was, and I gave them the permission to enter the house. I wondered who called the cops because we didn't do anything wrong, only to find out that I was about to be scammed my only child. The police came in with the lady from social services. I got really confused by what was happening. Nicholas came out to check what was going on. They told him that they had got a complaint about a mother who wasn't taking care of the newborn baby because she was on drugs. So they were asked to come and take the child up until the mother gets help for her addiction. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, ever since my affair with Nicholas, I have been sober for months, so I didn't understand what was going on. A few days later, Mario called the police and my commander to report me for using, and revealed that he had been working with NCIS for months to build a case against me for using drugs. He had been collecting evidence, including going through my phone and taking secret videos of me. He told me that he had evidence of my adultery, and he had been following me for months. I couldn't believe that he would actually do something so evil to me. I thought he had loved me, but clearly we were both pretending in this marriage. Now I'm getting kicked out of the Navy after just getting promoted, and I was about to re-enlist and get a huge bonus. I won't be able to use the GI Bill, and it'll be hard to find a job. This has also ostracized me from everyone, so I am completely lonely and isolated, while he at least has friends and family for support. I guess it serves me right, but I just keep wondering why he couldn't just divorce me like a normal person, and we could move on. My marriage had been going very badly for years. I cheated on my husband, and he turned me into the police and my job for using drugs. Now I'm stuck in the house. I don't know where to start when I try to fix my life because Mario has ruined me to the core. I had no backup or whatsoever. I don't know how I would survive without my son. Nicholas dumped me after he had discovered that I was using drugs and filed for full custody of the child. My life is just a mess, and I don't even know how and where to start fixing it. Please help me, Redditors. I am lost and in need of any advice.